Hey, welcome to Woodworking with Wes. Today I want to talk about something that is very basic to woodworking and can sometimes be a little intimidating for newbies. When you do a really nice project, you want to put on a really nice finish. Well, there are some very easy finishes to use that are very simple to apply, and if you're just getting started in your woodworking adventure, here's a couple for you to check out. I'm going to show you polycrylic, spray lacquer, and shellac. Now, all of these finishes I'm going to put on a piece of mahogany and a piece of walnut, and we're going to compare. Let's get started. I have cut these squares of wood, sanded them to the kind of finish that I would do on a project, and I've labeled them with the letter of what we're doing. So this is going to be my shellac finish. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to spray on a little bit of the finish and see how it changes the color of the wood. Every kind of finish has its own way that it changes the color of the wood. All right. Now we're going to let each one of them dry, and we're going to give each piece of wood 2 coats. But there's our shellac finish. L for lacquer finish. We're using Deft spray lacquer. Same application. I left a little corner of it unfinished so that we could see the difference between the finished part and what the raw wood looks like. We're going to do that on each one of our pieces. Okay, polycrylic. Be sure to shake your can. Polycrylic is a water-based finish. The other two are not. Shellac is its own thing, but spray lacquer is a rosin base. So there's our polycrylic. We'll put it over there. Let's do the same thing. This is our shellac, piece of mahogany. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to leave one corner unfinished so we can see the difference between the raw wood and the finish. Here's our piece of lacquer. All right. Okay. There's our lacquer on our mahogany, and polycrylic for our final one. Oh, right here. Okay. Now I keep wiping the tip of my polycrylic because it has a tendency to dry up real quick, and so it doesn't spray quite as nice. So you just have to make sure you clean it a little bit. And there's our polycrylic. While we're waiting for those to dry, I want to talk a little bit about each one of these. Polycrylic is a water-based polyurethane type by Minwax. It comes in paintable or sprayable type finishes. You can even spray this through an air cup type gun or an electric sprayer. Or you can buy it in the aerosol can, or you can use a brush. The lacquer, this is our little aerosol can of lacquer. Deft makes a brushable lacquer. Typically, lacquer has to be sprayed, and you can spray most kinds of lacquer very easily, but Deft actually makes a brushable lacquer, and so you actually can do all 3 applications again with lacquer. So you have brush and spray, and shellac is the same way. Shellac, I don't have a can of shellac, but shellac can also be painted, and of course, as you can see, can be sprayed. And so there's application variables that you can use for all 3 of these, depending upon how you want to apply it to your piece. And so if you want to use a paintbrush, follow the directions. Spray can is nice and easy. And if you have the ability to use a cup gun or electric sprayer, you can use that on any of these also. We're going to wait for this to dry for about 15 or 20 minutes. We're going to come back and sand it and give it a second coat and take a look at what these look like. I have allowed my finishes to dry. It only took about 20 minutes. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to sand these finishes with a sanding sponge. I have 2 different kinds. This is just a little bit finer sanding sponge. This one's a little coarser. And we're going to sand our finish. I'm just going to wipe it off with my hand here. This, like I say, this is our lacquer. So we'll come back here to our deft lacquer. And let's apply a second coat. Okay, we got a nice coat of finish on there. And again, like I say, I'm leaving an unfinished corner so we can tell the difference. All right. Here's our next finish. This is our polycrylic finish. Same thing. We're going to sand it. Now the polycrylic is, like I say, a water-based finish. And it was a little coarser in the feel of it when I got done. I am not a real fan of water-based finishes as far as spray finishes go. I use polycrylic quite a bit when I do a stain and a painted finish. So it's a good finish, but it has kind of a milky look to it, and the milky look disappears as it dries. So let's set that off and let it dry. Here is our shellac finish. Shellac is a very old-fashioned finish. Been around for a lot of years, but it's really a nice finish for sealing wood. And it does, if you put enough coats on it, does make a nice finish. So there's our shellac finish. Let's do the same thing to our mahogany. We've sanded our mahogany. Let's put on our shellac finish. Okay. That gives our mahogany kind of a very golden look. Very nice. Here's our lacquer finish. Okay. This is African mahogany that we're doing. It has a little more of a red tone to it. More than the shellac, it brings out a little more of the red. And here's our polycrylic finish. Clean the tip again, like I talked about. Now, that water-based finish of polycrylic has kind of turned our mahogany very red, almost a little bit of a purple hue to it. Let's wait for that to dry and put them up next to one another and see how that looks. We've allowed our finishes to dry. It has been about an hour from start to finish to both coats, but let's talk about what finish we have here. Now here's our lacquer finish. Just a word, All 3 pieces of walnut came out of the same board. All 3 pieces of mahogany came out of the same board. And so the way that the color has changed is indicative of the finish that goes on and not different colors of wood. So let's go back and let's talk about it. Here's our lacquer finish. Our walnut has a nice, smooth, and kind of a medium brown color. Our mahogany is a little less dramatic, and so is the walnut in our lacquer finish. Still a nice finish and a nice smooth finish as you get both coats on and sand in between. It's a nice finish. It went on very easy, and the color is nice, not quite as dark as the others. Here's our shellac finish. Again, nice smooth finish. Our color is a little deeper on our shellac. If you'll notice, the walnut is a little deeper color on our shellac, and so is the mahogany. Let's put our mahogany pieces up here together, and you'll notice that the mahogany piece on our shellac is a little deeper color, and so is the walnut. So we get a little better color in our shellac. We step over here to the polycrylic, and our walnut color is very deep, very nice. But it turned our mahogany almost a kind of a shade of reddish purplish color. I'm not really crazy over what the polycrylic did for our mahogany, but I love what it did on our walnut. So as you do your finishes, that is something to keep in mind. Not only how easy it is to put the finish on, but what does the finish bring out in the color of the wood? Like I say, all of this wood came out of the very same board, and yet you can see the difference of the colors that are brought out by the product that we're using. Something to keep in mind as you begin your adventure in woodworking, and we'll see you again on Woodworking with Wes.